what's up YouTube? Today's video we're gonna go over one of the most OG skills, and this is gonna be a blast from the past series, pretty much because there's really no more content to do in Arch Nemesis League in the current game, so we're gonna explore the past, right? So in this series I'm gonna go over some of the OG builds in the past, the most iconic builds, the coolest builds, the hippest builds, the hottest builds from the past. And we're going to start it off with the build that was used to kill Atziri first in softcore. It was called Ambush League. And I'm not really remembering what exactly the hardcore version of the league was called. Oh, it's called Invasion League, and the softcore was Ambush or something. But basically, you got a Atziri's Horn reward if you were one of the top 50 people to kill it. So you can see here, this is what the split phase in Atziri looks like with the build, Elite Buzzsaw. And that's the name of the build. So basically, you could dodge a lot of stuff, and the phase lasts quite long. You kind of try to bait out Flame Blast towards one side, then you Whirling Blaze over to the other side. And it's a very, very long fight because guess what? Damage was horrible back in the day. And this is what Atziri looked like with almost no gear, right? And we're going to go over what gear you're using, and you will not believe your eyes when you see some of the amazing items on this character. Now, as I was saying, this is a blast from the past series, most iconic builds, and I think one of the main things is it highlights how damage is scaled. You will see that even in the past, everything is scaled with attack speed, crit chance, crit multi, and flat damage, and more multipliers. And that's just pretty much how damage works in this game, or how math actually works. And also, we'll be able to see some of the old chase uniques that used to be in the game. So you see this nice pair of boots. This is Skyforth. This used to be like 80x, Mjolnir 50, 60x, right? These used to be the chase items in the past. So let's get started, as there is a chase item in this build, but it's not super expensive, but it's an item that is pretty much known as worthless vendor trash nowadays. So you might be wondering what build actually did kill Atziri first, and Matho was actually able to get the first Atziri kill, and he was able to do it with Ellie Buzzsaw Spectral Throw Non-Crit. Nowadays, non-crit builds do exist, especially with the advent of this one node known as Precise Technique. Imagine how much stronger Ellie Buzzsaw Spectral Throw would be if you took this node. 40% more attack damage. So the build pretty much just scale flat elemental damage and attack speed, and it's non-crit, so you pretty much just want attack speed on your weapon as much as possible, kind of like the Lightning Claw Berserker build. And you want as much flat LE damage on jewelry, your foil, and your damage auras, right? So just Wrath and Anger. So what are the build defenses? Now, back in the day, this was actually the chase unique, a Lightning Coil. Lightning Coil was probably one of the most sought after chests in hardcore. And the reason being is that it used to be a legacy variant where it used to be 40% Fizz taken as lightning. Now, I'm pretty sure in the Gauntlet, a lot of people might want to be trying to use Lightning Coil. And the reason why Lightning Coil is so good is because it fixes the armor formula. Because armor is not really effective against huge hits, the Fizz to Lightning converts some of the damage to Lightning, so your Fizz hit is actually smaller, so your armor actually is more effective. Now, if you look at actually the build defenses, holy moly. So these are pre-determination days, before determination actually gave flat armor. Look at this build's defense. So the reason they use Lightning Coil is because it has 1% armor. It's actually kind of weird because the Lightning Coil alone, I guess the Lightning Coil back in the day didn't have a roll this high for armor and evasion. But basically, it has 1% physical damage reduction from armor, 45% chance to evade, which is not too bad. And it does run Purity of Lightning and Purity of Fire. You do use Purity of Lightning because it helps improve the physical mitigation on Lightning Coil. And Purity of Fire and Purity of Lightning is used because Atziri's main spells are both fire and lightning damage, right? There's no real cold damage in the fight. So you can see here, fire resist at 84%, cold resist at 77%, and lightning resist at 84%. And chaos res, like usual for most softcore players, negative resist still, even back in the day. Now, I think this is from Acro and Phase Acro. It's Phase Acro in the game. I don't see a chance to dodge spells actually here. But basically, you can see it has 45% evade and then 30% dodge attacks, right? So I think he just took Acro and not Phase Acro as the tree. You can't really see the tree back in the past because most people use the PoE URL, and the PoE URL links to the most modern day tree. So you can see here, there's not really that much layering of defenses. You solve the Fizz mitigation with Lightning Coil. You solve your elemental mitigation with max res on fire res and lightning res, right? And then everything else, you just have a little bit of evasion. So not exactly the tankiest build for taking on the content, but it is geared a lot towards doing Atziri because the evasion helps with the Atziri spears, and the fire res and lightning res help with the Atziri spells, right? So what are the actual build offenses, right? So you must be thinking with all of these lack of defenses, this build must be pumping the damage, right? So like I said earlier, it does scale attack speed and flat LA damage. So you do have a lot of elemental damage of attack rolls on jewelry and belt, like percent elemental damage rolls. You also get flat on jewelry, and you can get flat on gloves. Now the links for the build were LMP, life leech, faster attacks, blood magic, and elemental damage with attacks. So blood magic back in the past would be pretty much like life tap is today, except it didn't. I don't really think there was actually a damage multiplier to blood magic back in the day. LMP is pretty much used for the clear life leech. I don't really know why people chose life leech. I mean, life gain on hit is probably. I don't think it was as good as life leech. But Life Leech used to work a little bit differently in the past. Elemental damage with attacks has always been a really good gem. Now, you might be wondering why people aren't using added lightning and added cold damage, and I do think that those gems were not as strong as before. Although it's hard to tell because back in the day without Pob, it was actually really hard to actually test what was actually the best, right? So you do have elemental weakness for your offensive curse, and then wrath, anger, and haste for your offensive auras. When Mathel did the kill, I don't think he had haste because you needed a little bit more aura reservation in order to fit in haste. So now let's go see what were the actual items. So I actually found this post back in the day when he was making form guides. Well, this person was actually banned, but anyhow, let's see the game-winning gear, right? So this is a foil, your standard 18 to 34 cold damage. This thing is horrible, right? This is really, really bad. Back in the day, LE damage wasn't really buffed on one-handed weapons yet. It does actually have Culling Strike instead of the multi on it. And it is a fancy foil, so it does have +2 attack speed. So it is pretty fast, and it will help you scale your flat damage on auras. And then you have Alpha's Howl, right? Alpha's Howl was a pretty iconic item in the past. It was reduced mana instead of mana reservation efficiency of skills. It made it so you can't get frozen. It helps you run more auras, and it gives you +2 aura gems, which is really important for your Wrath, Purity of Lightning, and Purity of Fire or Anger auras. Now the shield is some life and resist. No attack speed rolled on here. And this thing, 66 life, 16 all res, some flat fire damage. It's pretty good, right? I think one thing you might notice is that there's no real crafted mods on any gear because I don't think crafted mods came until I don't even remember when crafted mods were introduced or the crafting bench, but definitely not back in Ambush League. And here you have a corrupted amulet, a gold amulet with no life, 1 all attributes, 33 dex, 9% fire damage. Man, this amulet is actually terrible. Pretty much only used for the 32% elemental damage with attack skills. This ring is actually pretty good in the past. A lot of resist, 1 to 14 lightning damage to attacks. So you can pretty much get the general gist of what Chris was going for, right? So Chris is pretty much giving us all the garbage in the world. And because everything is garbage, even garbage can seem good, right? It's kind of like he's starving us and then he's giving us like crumbs of some dog poop and we'll like to eat the crumbs of dog poop. It's pretty much what he's doing. And you can see here is the lightning coil with the legacy roll of 40%. This item is actually pretty good. It also has flat lightning damage, but it does give you negative 60 lightning res, which makes it kind of hard to cap your res out. But you do run 2 purities, right? And here's the gloves. This pair of gloves is actually pretty good. I mean, might be one of the best items in this whole gear set. It's T1 life, high attack speed roll, flat fire damage, percent armor and evasion, and also 1 res. This is like a mirror worthy item, I think, almost, right? This belt, as terrible as always, 18 cold res, 10 strength, and 27 elemental damage of attacks. And boots, life, dual res, 30 move speed. Not actually too bad, and even +1 level of socketed gems, right? You do see a lot of gears corrupted, and that's because it was Invasion League and Vault Orbs were just recently introduced, right? So overall gear is pretty bad, but back in the day, this is actually pretty good gear for most people, right? So overall, what can we actually conclude from this build, right? This build is pretty fun to play. It was actually one of the probably most popular builds of that league. And Matho really popularized it, right? People love Spectral Throw. Spectral Throw was a de facto #1 skill back in the day, right? There was no real additional ways to get projectiles, so people actually had to use LMP. Nowadays, people would never use LMP. And it's kind of funny that no one even considered to use GMP for better clear just because the damage is already so bad. Damage creep and power creep is pretty crazy, especially with no ascendancies in the past. Like you can see here, oh yeah, we forgot to go over to build offense, right? It's only 14,000 DPS, right? Nowadays you can have 14,000 DPS in like lovely in the axe, right? So damage creep with like ascendancies is huge, and the masteries on the tree, cluster jewels, everything, right? And that's kind of crazy because nowadays this damage would probably be like a couple million for a really high end spectral throw build. And without Palm, there's probably a lot of build optimizations. I don't really think that Life Leech is exactly the best link in the past, or Blood Magic, and there's probably another way to solve the mana issue. But back in the day without Palm, there's no way to really figure out what were actually the best links unless you like did some manual testing in game. And next build we'll do is the world first hardcore Atziri kill build. And it's actually a completely different build, and it revolves around an iconic axe known as Soul Taker. But thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know if you like these type of videos, and if you would like to see any other iconic builds that I could do, maybe like a Mjolnir build or something like that. But thanks for watching. I hope you find more Meters, Exalts, and Atziris than me, and see you next time. Bye!